Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
Good morning. We are on with Sarah Gamblin-Luig. She is the Deputy Commissioner for the City of St. Louis Emergency Management. And Sarah, I wanted to find out a little bit of details about your duties, your overall position with St. Louis, with the city.
Okay, great. So with SEMA, the City Emergency Management Agency for the City of St. Louis, my specific area of concentration includes communications, mass notification, and mass fatality management. So a pretty wide spectrum, but our agency is very small, so we do all touch all phases and can, be reassigned to whatever is happening at the time. So it's very flexible, but comms is typically where I situate a large portion of my time. I also serve as our EMA liaison to our local emergency planning commission, so working with our chemical industry partners. And I am also the PIO and information officer for that group as well. And that entails a lot of communications, of course. I receive the Tier 2 filing documents from businesses that have reporting requirements, and I manage those within our EMA. And then also I staff the hazmat spill hotline for the LEPC as well. And that is an additional 24/7 duty, but that's how I get my cell phone. So it's kind of a nice trade-off.
So you're kind of filling many different hats there simultaneously.
Oh, absolutely.
This would be like a jump forward to a question that's a little farther down. Are you a one-man operation or a one-person operation?
No, so our EMA, while we are for a somewhat large metropolitan area that has a lot of activities going on, our EMA is only spec'd for 4 employees, and we've been down a man for just about a year. So, imagine already being a small shop of 4 people. We have the commissioner, myself, an emergency management specialist, and our executive secretary, which really fills a lot of our admin and finance support roles. Heading into COVID, we lost our emergency management specialist to another position, and we were off and running with COVID, and here we are. So we make do with the people that we have, and have to lean on partners sometimes within our other city departments, and are fortunate to have, in this case of COVID, a strong health department that we work with. So that's how we're set up. But it's not a one-man shop, but it's not too far off, especially with the additional roles that emergency management takes on and things like that. So
and like you said, COVID didn't make it any easier at all.
Right, COVID didn't help. We kind of talk about there's never a dull moment, but 2020 really, there wasn't a dull moment. There wasn't any downtime, and a lot of lessons to take away, and we got a lot of work done. And like I said, we're fortunate to have good partners, and that's key to maintaining, and why it's important to maintain your relationships with your partner agencies across your city and your region. So, with us being in the metropolitan St. Louis area, SEMA serves the city of St. Louis solely, but we function as part of that regional and metropolitan area, and we do a lot of planning. We are a UASI area, so urban area security initiative, that gives us funding and allows us to do that regional planning. So we partner with several counties around the metropolitan area and function that way in some cases as well. So that's helpful too.
Okay. So what's your background and how did you get into the field?
My background is wide and varied. In my younger days, I peddled everything from soft pretzels to lipstick, if you can believe that. And I actually started down a career path. I worked for Anheuser-Busch for 10 years. So, again, I started with that public relations, managing tour guides, and being that frontline ambassador for Anheuser-Busch and all things beer and Clydesdales.
Not a bad
That
job.
kind No, not terrible. I could see the Clydesdales every day, almost as long as I wanted to. Um, Through that management role, I started doing some safety training for the tour guides because, of course, they're leading a group of 90 people through an industrial complex, and one of the largest anhydrous ammonia functions within the city of St. Louis. I believe it is the largest. So there's some safety factors to keep in mind with that. I started doing that and ended up leveraging my way into training coordinator position down in the plant, overseeing the safety training for everyone who was involved in making the beer in St. Louis. And I did that until I was asked to stop doing that. I was laid off after the InBev takeover in 2009, and I kind of, busied myself around the house, building gardens and making cocktails. Um, for happy hour for a bit. And then I found this job with the city of St. Louis that had a lot of the safety components that I had worked with on a smaller scale for, the beer factory. And I didn't really know much about emergency management at all, but I knew the responsibilities that were listed on the position. And I had a degree in communications and marketing. So I marketed myself right into a 50% pay cut. And here I am 11 years later. So I went from small scale to big scale, and now I make the safety for our entire city. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, great. To kind of change gears here, you several years ago you came up and you did a thing with the Illinois Public Information Officers Association, where you talked at one of our trainings. But one of the things you specifically talked about was the City Hall selfie. It was the hashtag City Hall selfie. What was the purpose of it, and can you provide some details on it?
Sure. So, one of my greatest public service employee claims to fame is, being a repeat champion of City Hall Selfie Day. And City Hall Selfie Day was actually an event that was started by an organization called ELGL, Engaging Local Government Leaders, which is a really great organization that brings together a lot of people that are really invested in their public service. They serve some role in a government setting, and they're just, they're really excited by that. They're really proud of that, and looking for ways to continually improve the services they provide to their communities. So City Hall Selfie Day, was born out of that group, and really it's like the Super Bowl, if I can say that, of government employees that are really proud of the communities they serve. So it's kind of a twofold. Its intention is partially to engage your community and have them come and take selfies, with their city hall. And every city hall has a little bit different story. Of course, mine is majestic and historic and really cool looking in a photo. Um, so that was one part of it, get in touch with the community, get them out and have them engaged in taking photos. But also what it kind of, I think, morphed into a little more was, again, like the day of the year for the government employee to go and showcase um, their city hall and some of their other city facilities, because it's not just city hall.
So, how many city halls have you visited? What's your record?
The first year I got a trophy, um, and it was actually, I think, the second year of City Hall selfies, and I went to over 50. I think I got 50 that year, and the person that won the year before went to 14.
Wow.
Now I will say I am one of the few that is uniquely positioned to be able to capitalize on. St. Louis County has a ton of municipalities, some of which are, their city facility building, whether it's an admin building or a city hall officially, can be within a couple miles of each other. So, with a little bit of mapping tools and taking the day off to go and do this, you can achieve quite a few. Um, but yeah, it was quite a lot.
That is a lot. That's a lot of traveling around, even just in a multi-county region like St. Louis. I mean, that's still a lot of movement.
Yeah, it's also, it's really helpful when like I said, we function a lot in a regional capacity in the area. So a lot of our municipalities, something can happen there. And in these smaller municipalities, they may be calling out for help. So it really helps me as an emergency manager to be able to have laid eyes on a lot of these different municipalities. So I kind of took it as an educational trip as well.
Right, right. Excellent. So it's kind of twofold.
Yeah, I still took the day off though, so it's on the books.
All right, so let's switch gears here. Let's talk. You are a member of Team Rubicon.
Correct.
Explain your involvement with them and exactly what they are.
Sure. I joined Team Rubicon about 5 years ago. Um, it is now 11 years old. For anyone who's not familiar with Team Rubicon, congratulations, because you probably haven't had a disaster in the past 11 years. Team Rubicon is a primarily veteran-oriented disaster response organization. It's comprised of, I believe, just over 70% veterans. I am not a veteran. I am what they refer to as a kick-ass civilian, um, which is not a bad title. I joined about 5 years ago, and we respond to disasters of all shapes and sizes, and bring a specific set of capabilities into a community to be able to help them once they've been struck by disaster. So I specifically have held leadership positions at the Region 7 and Midwest Territory level for communications management. So I just transitioned almost a year ago out of being the Midwest Territory communications manager, where I was responsible for 10 states as far as communication goes. So any responses we would help with, press releases, social media, interviewing, things like that. And I've taken on a more of a contract role with the incident management team as the public information officer. So now I have the capability of deploying to incidents across the country, and in some cases different parts of the world, to help tell the story of Team Rubicon and their response in that particular community.
Awesome, awesome. So you definitely have seen a lot. Like I'm looking at your bio here, and it says tornadoes, floods, hurricanes. That you've pretty much been to every kind of disaster that could be out there.
Yeah, and at least virtually, yes. So, it's one thing to be on the ground, and I've gotten a little bit of that. I've done some recon work on tornadoes in Missouri. So typically we'll try and get a group out on the ground to do some eyes-on damage assessment and kind of align that with the capabilities that Team Rubicon has, and see if there's a match, and establish relationships on the ground with the EM, which again is kind of fitting for me, being an EM myself, to be able to say, here's what we can bring. Do you need our help? And look for those opportunities to get our folks on the ground, because they're always ready. The volunteers are referred to as gray shirts. We wear gray shirts, and you want to talk about chomping at the bit. Like if something happens, a lot of roles of comms on the internal side during any kind of an incident is, hold on, we're looking at it. We'll let you know when it's time to go. If we get the thumbs up, you're going to know about it. Just hold on for a second, make sure your go bag's ready. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges as a comms person within Team Rubicon is kind of holding people at bay for just a minute.
Until you get the go order.
Right.
Right. All right. So let's change gears here. Let's come back to St. Louis and talk about how you guys handle communicating emergencies out to the community. How do you guys get that information out?
We have several tools that we use to communicate within the city of St. Louis. In the end of 2019, we upgraded and introduced we worked out a contract with Everbridge, and we launched what we call Notify STL. So that increased our capability. Before we've used the Nixle platform for about 10 years, and that allowed us to do text and emails to anyone who subscribed. And you can publicize that as much as you want, but getting everybody in your community to opt in and say, send me a message at 3 a.m. is not super easy. So by launching Notify STL, that really broadened the reach that we had. That enabled us to do wireless emergency alerts and be able to leverage some of those tools as well when we need to. But this is a highlight for me because I worked on it for 10 years, to get this solution implemented, and it would I can't think of a day that I was more happy in my job than the day that I got to launch that for our city. And that complements, of course, our tried and true friends in local media. We try and work as much as we can with them, to maintain those relationships, and people know to go to the media. So that's important. We do leverage social media. And including Nextdoor to be able to reach our residents and people that come and work in the city and visit, typically for large events and all sorts of sports. And then we do have outdoor warning sirens still. It's an older technology, it's an older system. We are still using that at this time. And then of course, we have our website, and if the need arises and I need to use bulletin boards and kind of get people out with megaphones, I'll do that too.
We have, sometimes you got to go old school and you got to do it the old fashioned way, flyers and microphones.
Exactly. I will say COVID gave me my first opportunity to use my training in designing billboards. So that was that was a highlight of 2020 if there was going to be one. I didn't anticipate using that skill very often, but here we are.
Yeah. And, the other thing is right now is what they're finding with vaccination issues are that you have seniors that do not have the technology capabilities or the ability to use a smartphone to access registration to get on a date for a vaccination. So how do you reach out to them? It's got to be old school.
Right. And that's funny you bring that up. We have a hotline that's been established in the city, for that very reason. But also, we had talk over the past week about, doing FM transmitting and looking at, using that solution that a few people have been using throughout the vaccination process so far. So I might well jump into DJing
Yeah.
shortly as
Or
well.
yeah, get on the AM radios. I mean, get on those talk
Exactly.
shows and talk to them through the AM radio because we do know a lot of seniors listen to AM radio.
Yeah, and nothing's off the table. We know that gaps exist, and anything we can do to fill those gaps, we're going to explore. So here we are.
So you brought up Nextdoor, and it seems like every one of the public information officers that I've interviewed has talked about Nextdoor in one way, shape, or another. Tell me a little bit about your experience with using Nextdoor.
I kind of got off to a rocky start with Nextdoor. Our agency, we didn't know anything about it. Somebody brought it into the city and said, "Hey, we're going to be using this," and we literally read in our local paper that we were going to be using it to send out emergency alerts, and we didn't know what it was. We certainly hadn't agreed to use it in that capacity. With having one person that's issuing a lot of these products, jumping from one platform to the next, it takes a lot of time, and especially when you're, in such a crunch to be able to get that critical information out, you've got to, kind of leverage the reward and the time for that. So, we learned a little bit more about it, and there were some things that I was a little apprehensive about getting into, with, the communities that they serve. There were some restrictions on households with sex offenders and things like that. They couldn't be on the platform, and for me, while I don't, condone any type of activity like that, I still need to be able to warn that person if there's a tornado coming.
Right.
So for me in the beginning, it wasn't something that I was, just ready to jump into and say, okay, let's go, all the way with this tool. So I kind of laid back for a few years, and finally, it did take root in our community. And once I kind of got back out and got to know, some, I think everybody knows Joe with
Hmm.
Nextdoor. So, um, and talking with Joe and learning a little bit more about the platform, and then seeing how many people had adopted it in our city, and some of the capabilities that we would have with it, I came back around and I did jump onto it. And now, we're looking at 27% of our community is on Nextdoor. So at that point, it's a little bit silly not to use it in some way. I don't use it, for every alert that we do in the city. I do use it in some cases, especially, COVID curfews and changes that really impact people's lives and functions within the city. I'll use alerting for that. But really, it's been a great platform to get out and just have some communication with residents in the city, and kind of quiets down some of the extra chatter from the other social media platforms of people from outside of the city, that still have opinions on what's going on in the city, and allows me to focus on the people that are actually sitting and living in our community. So it's been very beneficial, I think. I use it to discuss the siren tests particularly, and as well as other things, but it's been really helpful for that, for me to pinpoint issues and get that information from folks about, are you hearing it? Are you not hearing it? And, here's some things to make sure that you're covered for alerting.
Very good. I know everybody I've talked to is the nice thing about it is the fact that you can actually narrow it down to neighborhoods, and if you did the work and that Joe makes you do it, you got to have the KML file to do the neighborhoods and all that. It is beneficial to do that, because if you just want to say you have localized flooding and you only want to target one specific area, it's hard to do that over Facebook or Twitter or one of those other platforms. Um, you can't geofence it as easily, and this way you can geofence it pretty easily.
Absolutely.
All right, so can we I'm going to jump a little. I'm going to go backwards here. So you were so you've been a PIO there for how long? How many years would you say you've been there?
I've been with the office for 11, and like I said, it was a little slower when I started with PIO. I was a little bit more focused on my training officer hat at that point, and just kind of getting up and running with all things emergency management. So I was getting my FEMA super master's degree in FEMA courses. Um, but within a couple of years, I was really hitting the stride and getting farther into PIO. And like I said, I have a degree in communications, so I always kind of end up arcing back to the communications things. So pretty much right along, but definitely more established now.
So were you around when the incident in Ferguson occurred?
I was around when the incidents took place in Ferguson. Um, I was not directly involved in the activities that were going on in Ferguson, but again, with us being that metropolitan area, Ferguson is a few miles north of the city of St. Louis, but we do a lot of things regionally, and obviously the all the eyes of our region, as well as the country, were on our greater area. So we did have some other activities. Some of the protests took place within our city limits, but we also had some unrest around the same time that was within our city, and things that we worked with from our office as well.
From the standpoint from emergency management and of it, were you doing any messaging at all, or was it just simply support messaging on the back end for what was coming out of from St. Louis County Sheriff's Department and so on?
So there's a couple of different things that I was doing during that time. Top, of course, was maintaining situational awareness of the things that were happening in the area surrounding us and within our city, and any messaging that needed to happen around that. We did have some instances where we'd have protest activity and some things that turned a little more destructive later in the evening times, and there was some communication that we might have shared from our police department, um, And then there was, for a time, there was a relationship with, at the time, the police chief and the leaders of some of the protest activity. And one of the things that I worked on at that point was, messaging to be able to utilize, some of our mass notification tools, um, with some messaging around those incidents. So, and always to me, whenever we have anyone, protesting, people in the streets for whatever reason, we're always monitoring our weather. And we did have some cases where, we had some weather that was coming into the area, like severe weather, strong storms and things like that. So being able to make sure we could reach folks that were out partaking in those activities with, public safety information was important. So, really focusing on that. But also, when curfews went in place, being able to issue that information as well, for everyone in the area to know, avoid this intersection and this intersection because you're not going to be able to get through, kind of traffic rerouting and things like that, was really the focus of what we did.
Okay, great. All right, so the pandemic certainly has shown how emergency management preparedness needs to be upgraded. There needs to be some reworking of it. How do you see improvements being made in the future as we move forward out of the pandemic?
So, for me, I think 2020 as a whole reminded everyone that they need to prepare in some way or another. Whether it was, like everybody stocking up on toilet paper, or, really laying out a full plan to be able to shelter in place for, 3 weeks a month in your home. We try to have that conversation on preparedness all the time, and we really got, I think, a little bit more focus on it throughout 2020 when people started to say, oh, we were down to our last roll and now there's no toilet paper. Well, that's why, we try to encourage you got to have that emergency stock. And, we can kind of laugh a little bit about the, toilet paper. Um, but that could be anything. We could substitute anything in that place, and, have it really highlight that need to prepare and have, plans, supplies on hand. um, I think that COVID definitely helped gain some awareness on that. I know 2020 was overwhelming in a number of different ways, and, certainly some people have, residual and ongoing, financial, hardship from that. But, looking for ways that, wherever we are on, the economic arc, or, no matter what our income is, finding ways that we can better prepare. I'm one, I tell everybody, look at the clearance. You go to Walgreens, look at the clearance. Help build out your first aid kit there. Pick up an extra canned good of food whenever you go to the grocery store. Anything that you can do to help, kind of, make yourself that much more resilient to whatever the hazard is. Whether it's, we've asked you to shelter in place for a month, which is a lot, um, or, a couple of hours. Anything you can do is going to
Right.
help out. So I'm hoping that, as the kind of, I'll say, as the dust kind of settles on, 2020, and, COVID, comes a little bit more under control, that people remember, um, the fact that being able to take those actions, would be helpful, and that they keep that motivation, um, going.
I agree. I agree. I know that like with, the ready.gov, and they have their plans for September because that's always National Preparedness Month and that. But that's something that'll have to be reworked where emergency management groups are going to have to be putting messaging out as a reminder, monthly for people to prepare for things. And I know there's always messaging every month. There's always something that they have to put out. But just as a reminder to keep people prepared, at least thinking in that way.
Absolutely. And that's something that I do year round. It's sprinkled from the topic of the calendar to the bottom. Of course, it focuses, in September for National Preparedness Month. This month, February, for at least some of our states in the Midwest, is Earthquake Awareness Month. So, we're hitting hard with facts and details on earthquakes this month, but that preparedness is still part of that, being prepared, and the things that you can do that not only serve you during an earthquake. And that's the thing, we work uh, through the all hazards concept. So I don't just have a plan for tornadoes. I've got a plan for all hazards. And a lot of those action items are the same for different hazards. So, and maybe that's something that is not as well communicated to people as it could be, that you don't have to have a different plan for everything. You're making one plan, and your actions are going to be similar. So, you're going to shelter in place, you're going to evacuate, you're going to need supplies regardless. And maybe that's one of the changes and the takeaways, is that we really try and focus on that.
Great comments. Great. So I've noticed some recent comments that have been popping across social media, and there was several arguments going back and forth between some different experts about deleting social media posts or comments, or blocking accounts that are offensive from accessing a public entity account. What's your opinion on it?
I try to do whatever I can to keep from having to delete a comment or blocking an account. I'm one of those that's of the opinion that all government accounts should try to do this. It's important that we have guidelines for engagement, and that we stay aware of each platform's terms of services, which is a little difficult and sometimes daunting to do. But if somebody violates our guidelines, we need to address it. Again, the kill them with kindness, give the person the opportunity to edit or remove it themselves. Kind of being the nice guy, and I don't want to have to remove it. But if they can edit it, or sometimes come back with a clearer mind, or hours, removed from when they might have been angered by something, then sometimes that does work. Sometimes you can talk through it. I know a lot of people say you get 3 comments and that's it. So if somebody is just trying to be a troll, and really just, kind of, that's the only thing they're going to do, you don't want to invest your whole day in it, certainly. But that doesn't apply to disagreements or unpopular views. Some cases, hate speech is awful. You can say really nasty things, but it's still protected to a degree. We shouldn't compromise free speech, but also some comments may have other legal consequences, which we've
Yeah.
seen more recently, or be found to violate terms of service by the platforms, and they're subject to actions of the platform. um, and a lot of people, it seems like some folks want to say, oh well, I don't agree with that, delete it. And that's absolutely not where we should find ourselves. That's um, you know I think an internal education opportunity, and something that should get a lot more focus, is if you have people that are using these tools and platforms, representing your government, they absolutely should have some sort of training, to know how to do that correctly. And I think that's a big gap, that it's not an easy one to approach. A lot of times you have elected leaders, that that's a tricky a tricky situation to approach. And I don't really think it should be approached as I'm telling you this is how you should do it, more than let me help you, and give you the facts, and the experience of a professional that is within that function, that understands how it works, and being able to share that knowledge, to keep people from becoming vulnerable, or taking a bad step, and getting in a bad situation. um,
Right. And what particularly is an issue with, and you brought it up about the political figures, and sometimes management, is they may not understand the repercussions if they say, oh, I want that comment removed, I want it deleted. And there could be repercussions on the agency, because then it violates Open Meetings Act or Open Records Acts or FOIA requirements. And they don't realize that if you don't have a retention capability, or you don't retain it in its native form, it opens up the door for legal action to be brought against the agency, and Nobody really wants that
Oh,
if you can
right.
avoid it.
You know, it's a disaster you can mitigate. So, um, why wouldn't you mitigate it? That's kind of my take.
Right.
And I always try to be a good advisor and present that information. Whenever anything changes or anything comes up, and you can be fortunate and you can be lucky, 99 times, and then that one time is all it's going to take, and it's going to be a huge headache for somebody that really doesn't want to have that headache. So I'm an emergency management person. I want to prevent and mitigate whatever I can before we get to the disaster and having to deal with response and recovery. So um, that's my take.
Great. I appreciate the comments. So do you guys have a strategic communications plan for your
My
organization?
my strategy, I try to keep it as simple as possible. Again, we're dealing with a small staff, and a lot of responsibilities. So um, my strategy is this: to maintain open lines of communications with the community that we serve. Um, I particularly work to achieve and refine this during, the blue sky days as much as we can, so that it's learned and people know that whenever, the gray skies happen and something nasty's on our horizon, that the information that they need and that they can trust comes from our agency. They know what it should look like, to kind of rule out some of those imposters or, people trying to do bad things in bad times, so that everyone is familiar with, hey, if I need to know what to do, here's where I need to go. These are the people that should be telling us. And then, that we're able to transition that relationship and start to help people get into recovery following whatever the disaster or emergency is. So I really try to keep it simple, open communication. We're a source that you can trust, and here's what everything should look like. Yep.
Simple sometimes is better. I know some agencies have massive plans, and they may need to, and they may feel that they have to have that everything written down on paper. And a couple recent PIOs I've spoken to, and you and Corey DeBrindia, whose podcast airs tomorrow, she talks about her plan, and it's not on paper. And I get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need it on paper. It just has to be something that you've worked at and you know what you're
Exactly.
going to
And
do.
I'd love to have a ton of stuff on paper, but we don't have the time, we don't have the resources to put everything on paper. And I've made that a goal, and I've tried, and I've got some horribly scribbled notebooks that, just trying to get things down for the day when, we may have somebody coming in to learn how to do these things, and just so that they have more than what I had when I walked through the door, as far as perspective, because I'm hoping that the days of, well, we're going to do what we did last time is kind of going a little bit more out of the window. I think if there's a benefit to some of the chaos and different things that we've experienced, that I hope it's that, because when I came in and we were looking at a World Series, and they said we're going to do what we did in 2000 and whatever, and I said, well, I was guarding beer at the brewery, so um, they've asked me not to do that anymore. I need more to go on than that, because now I'm leading your emergency management through this process, and I need more to go on than that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Give me something a little bit more than
Right.
we're doing last year's plan. Yeah. Oh boy. All right. So your job as a PIO as it pertains to social media, how do you look at it?
Social media to me it's full of opportunities. Now we know some of those are really great, and some of them are not so great. Um, it's not always easy, and we may not always have the hours or the manpower that we would like to dedicate to it, but the majority of the public is familiar with it, and many do look to it for information, so we'd be silly not to use it, in my opinion. I just try to stay where the bulk of your people are, and give them good content to keep them engaged and hopefully to encourage them and present them with information so that they can make the best decisions for themselves and have a baseline knowledge, when talking about emergency management specifically, to keep them and their families safe, and hopefully more resilient to the hazards that we may experience.
So do you have a favorite platform?
You know, I like Twitter. Um, I don't say that because I'm friends and connected with the grandparents of Twitter, are residents of our city, and that's kind of a cool thing to be able to say. But I do like Twitter. It's a great place for me to be able to keep up with things that are going on in the city, to connect with our media personnel. It's short and sweet. If you've got a few minutes, you can scroll through some things, and you can spend hours if you want, certainly. And I just like the way that I can get information off of Twitter. I've got a lot of great relationships from Twitter, friends across the country, and I use it daily. There's a ton of platforms out there. That's probably my number one. If I'm killing time and looking to take a stress break, definitely going to TikTok though.
Yeah, you can definitely get lost for hours in TikTok. Oh,
I am known as an appreciator of the feline companion. So, anywhere on the internet that there's funny cat videos or cat pictures or whatever, I'll probably be there for some period of
there you
time.
go. All right, so we're going into the rapid fire question round. So it's whatever comes to mind when I ask the question, just answer first thing that pops in your mind. All right.
All
All right,
right.
here we go. First one, favorite food,
Ooh, nachos.
favorite book or movie.
Favorite book or movie? The dictionary has always been my favorite book.
That's not a
It
book.
is a
Come
book. I've got,
on.
ones that are 4 inches and they're so different. You get an old one and there's old words and you can't find computer and an old dictionary.
There you go. All right, favorite binge-worthy TV show.
Oh man, Netflix is so judgmental. Are you still watching? I have binge watched some of the finest series and most of them. So that's I don't even know where I can go with that.
So you've seen them all then. There you go.
Basically.
Your must-have junk food.
French onion dip. Woo.
Ooh, yeah, I'll agree with you on that. All right, your mantra.
Um, Work hard and do good. That again is ELGL. They gave us socks that say that, and that is very fitting.
Okay, answer this with the blank. If I could do anything, I would.
I would do Space Force social media. I think there's a fun opportunity there.
Oh, that would be interesting. I like that one.
I'm a space nerd. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I agree. And this talk about that asteroid that went by, that oblong-shaped asteroid that said the aliens visit us. Interesting that came by and then Space Force was created, right? Conspiracy theory. I don't know.
The truth is out there.
Exactly. All right. Where would you time travel to and why?
Oh man. Um, the Jurassic period. I can't explain it. I for some reason love dinosaurs. And I think that'd be really cool. Now, hopefully I could just, kind of pop in and out if I was being pursued, but yeah, dinosaurs all the way.
Okay. And I'm going to throw this last question in there. It wasn't on there. One person, dead or alive, if you could meet them, who would it be?
Oh man. Woot. You know what? I would have to go with Abe Lincoln.
Oh, okay. Honestly, there you go.
Neighbor in Illinois there. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Good, quick questions here. I like that. Some of them were phenomenal. Well, I don't know about the dictionary one, but they were phenomenal. Thank you. So some final thoughts. Is there anything else you want to share with us, just to give us a kind of a close?
I always just try to encourage people, find your group of people, find your colleagues, have that support group. It's more important now than ever. I've got a couple of great groups, that I've picked up from government social media, National Information Officers Association, and here and there, Team Rubicon folks. Find that support group and use them when you need to, because sometimes you just absolutely have to.
I agree with that. Everybody needs to have support network. They've got to have friends to fall back on you, and you have to be able to disconnect from work. And you
Absolutely.
have to. So I agree with that. All right. So how can people best reach out to you if they want to learn more about you or possibly connect with you?
The social medias are great. I'm on LinkedIn, like a lot of people. Twitter, also, you can find me at CommsDom, and also on Instagram at CommsDom. So if you're into photos, that was my 2020. my 2020 stress relief was learn how to use a camera a little bit better.
Awesome.
Instagram is it.
I will put all that in the show notes, and that'll all be in there along with Sarah's bio. So that was Sarah Gamblin-Luig, and I appreciate you coming on the show, Sarah. I hope you had a little bit of fun, and I hope our listeners enjoyed listening. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Definitely a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. I'm proud to be part of this distinguished list that you're growing here with the podcast. A lot of friends and mentors showing up here, so I'm happy to be part of that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.